What's some outdated advice that's no longer applicable today? Nobody's going to pay you to stare at a computer screen all day. Mom 1996, Dawn of Internets. You won't have a calculator in your pocket all the time, maths teacher. The week before I left for college, my dad bought a cheap electric etcher. He etched my social security number on my TV and bike and a couple other things. That way, if they were stolen and recovered, I could prove they were mine. Probably not done today. Be kind, please rewind. My kids saw a picture of a VHS tape and had no idea what it was. I'm still nostalgic for Beta though. Always keep a quarter on you in case you need to make a call. I'm old enough to remember when a payphone call still cost a dime. Friends' parents were really pissed off when the price went up, and they had to give each of their kids a quarter for an emergency phone call. That call had better be a real emergency then, too. In the original Boy Scouts handbook, if I recall, in order to deal with a suicidal person who threw themselves onto train tracks was to jump on top of them and restrain their extreme ties within the confines of the rails and allow the train to simply pass over them. However, as far as I'm aware, most modern trains have much lower clearances, and have monitoring and other equipment jutting from the bottom, leaving clearances of mere inches. How fucking common was suicide by train that it needed to be in the goddamned Boy Scout handbook? Probably about as common as finding yourself in quicksand, and I know how to survive that. Don't talk to strangers on the internet. Also, don't date strangers from the internet. To add to this, don't marry a stranger you met on the internet and have a bunch of kids with them. Then again, I think I've mostly enjoyed the 20 years I've spent with the stranger I met on the internet. Regularly clean the ball and rollers on your mouse. If the picture on your computer monitor is discolored or distorted, try pressing the degausser button. Make sure to keep spare change on you for the payphone. Just in case. If a high school student has a pager, he's probably a drug dealer. Yes, they actually told us this at my high school. I went to middle school back when pagers were a thing and were banned in school. A girl I knew had an insulin pump for her diabetes, which looks a lot like a pager, and a bitch of a teacher tried to take it from her thinking it was a pager. The teacher refused to believe it was an insulin pump, or possibly didn't know that insulin pumps exist, and either sent the girl to the office or gave her a detention. When her parents found out about the whole thing, they came down on that school with the fury of 1,000 titans. I don't know specifically what the parents said or did, but they put the fear of God into them so hard that the girl essentially became invincible. She could have opened a brothel in the library, and the administration wouldn't have said a thing. Disclaimer: I was given a What to Expect When You're Expecting book printed in the early mid-70s. 1. Up to 5 glasses of wine a day are safe, at least 2 are recommended. 2. Up to 4 hard alcoholic beverages a week are okay. 3. Snowsuits and car seats to keep babies warm in the car. 4. Breastfeeding is okay, but formula is better because it's scientifically better, and breastfeeding should only be done if you're not able to afford formula. Up to 2-ounce water beginning at 8 weeks, maybe 6. 5. Up to 1 2-pack of cigarettes a day is okay. 6. Too much cardio, more than 20 minutes of mild to moderate exercise a day, or actual hard exercise at all, increases stillbirth and SIDS afterwards. 7. Glorified the husband stitch. I may regret this, but what is the husband stitch, and how was it glorified? You will regret asking, lol. A husband stitch is when they're sewing you up after a vaginal delivery. They tie an extra stitch or 2 to make it tighter for your husband next time you do it. It's now considered malpractice, but it's so hard to prove. It can cause a lot of pain and long-term issues with sex. They were glorified to make your husband not so upset about you being damaged from delivery. Pretty much a mindset of, you get this and your husband will be happier. And of course, a woman's pain doesn't mean anything as long as her husband is sexually satisfied. To find your first job, like as a teenager, just go from place to place filling out paper applications. Nope. Now pretty much everywhere just says, apply online and we might call. We might call equals will give you no response for 6 weeks, then send you a generic rejection email. My grandma told me to find out where a restaurant is, look up their phone number in the yellow pages and call to ask for directions. As someone who has worked as a restaurant hostess before, the amount of people that actually asked for directions is honestly astonishing. There were also a lot of people that asked for the address. You need to learn to write in cursive or nobody will take you seriously, and you won't get good grades on your assignments in college. By 2010, when I went to college, virtually all of my assignments, including most tests, were digital, and even the few handwritten exams allowed regular print. To get a job, just walk in with a good attitude and a printed copy of your resume, and don't forget the follow-up phone call. When hiring at my work, my boss specifically writes to never call in the ad. If anyone calls, I'm supposed to tell them the position is filled, because if they read the ad and still call, they obviously can't follow basic instructions. Meanwhile, my parents' advice would still be, call anyway. It's a test to put people off. You have to prove you really want the job by pestering them. Which was also the advice teachers gave us at school. Admittedly, that was over a decade ago, but looking back, I'm pretty sure that advice was dated in the late aughts, too. Keep going into the shop building and pestering the manager was repeated to us, as well. I once spoke to a job coach who gave me an inspirational story about a girl he knew who got rejected, showed up and started working there anyway against the manager's will, and now she's the co-manager. Pretty sure that wouldn't go down like that these days. Or if it ever did. It's never a good idea to wear a mask to the bank. That a savings account is a good investment. What with 0.05% interest and all. Show your employer loyalty and they will be loyal to you. My family is super old-fashioned and don't understand this at all. My father spent 30 years in the military and then had to leave because he was too fat. He entered the job market at almost 50 and failed miserably. He had no idea how to compete. Everything he knew was what his father taught him 50 years ago. Poor guy almost lost his house before he found a job to support himself. He got an offer 2 years later for more money and it was still close to home, and he turned it down because he feels like he owes his current job. He just doesn't get it. It's not advised to square dance on your period. My MIL once told me that I should never lift anything while on my period because the strain will cause my uterus to fall out. My friend's grandmother said the same thing. She also wouldn't let my friend wash her hair on her period either and beat me with a wooden spoon the one time I did at her house. This was in 2013. To get a job walk-on in any place of business, they're always hiring and talking to the manager will get you that job starting today. I was told I may not have a calculator in the future and have to memorize multiplication division tables. They were right, but instead I have a supercomputer in my pocket. If a video game doesn't work at first, just blow on it. My grandma, don't drink water after eating fruit or you'll get sick. Apparently this comes from a time when people drank from wells. The sugar from the fruit would allow bacteria from the water to ferment in the stomach. Not a problem with modern water supplies. When my brother was around 0 to 2 years old, 2000 to 2002, doctors told my parents to have him avoid commonly allergenic foods. When he was 2, he had peanuts. My parents didn't think anything of it, as they had waited to give him anything like that for a couple years. But he had an allergic reaction, and they rushed him to the hospital. He had developed a life-threatening allergy to peanuts and tree nuts. 2 years later I was born. Same deal, I wasn't given nuts though I was tested when I was around 4, with no sign of an allergy. So I go on living my life without any nuts whatsoever. Not because I have an allergy, but because my brother had one. So in 5th grade, I was given a granola bar at baseball practice. I didn't know it had peanuts in it, but I asked my dad to take me home because I felt horrible. I had an extremely bad sore throat. My dad assumed I just didn't want to be there, and played video games or something. My paranoid mom, you can imagine why, asked me if I had anything to eat. I had another test, and sure enough, I had a life-threatening allergy to peanuts and tree nuts, not life-threatening the first time usually. It turns out, after more recent studies, the exact opposite is supposed to be done to young children. They must eat all kinds of foods that are commonly allergenic, so as to make their bodies used to the food, and much more or less likely to develop an allergy. If you're wondering, me and my brother underwent an experimental and new treatment over the past couple of years called oral immunity therapy, or OIT. We now take daily doses of around 5 peanuts, and other nuts we are allergic to. Luckily, we can eat anywhere we want now, without needing to carry epinephrine. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk. When my mother was pregnant with my brother and myself, she was told not to eat all kinds of different things, peanuts included, because, what if the baby is allergic? But my mom basically said, "Dumbass, that's why they're allergic," and ate a shit ton of peanut butter crackers anyway. What's some outdated advice that's no longer applicable today? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.